we go. Hey, welcome back, folks, to the Law Enforcement Life Coach Sometimes Heroes Need Help podcast. I told you guys when I started this thing that I was going to have subject matter experts, right? Subject matter experts, not because they had some fancy degree, but because they lived a life. And I've got a guy who's lived a life, man. Ciro Dominguez. 20, 30, I was going to say 28 years, 38 years on the job, man. Started back in this thing when I was a freshman in high school. Good God. And he looks like he's 45, but I think, I don't know, he's killing me, brother. In shape, doing all the things that he needs to be doing to run this clock out. Ciro, man, 38 years on the job. Back in 82, he started this thing over in Naples, and he has worked his way through this profession with a wide variety of assignments: patrol, investigations, training, IA, tactical, SWAT, aviation, you name it, he's done it. Naples, FDLE, Hillsborough County Aviation Authority, Hillsborough County SO, all levels of leadership throughout an organization for 38 years. And he ended up giving back by writing the Peacemakers Guide to Law Enforcement Leadership. Daily advice, tips, reflections. It's a journal for the law enforcement servant leader. And he's with us today. So without further ado, Ciro, brother, it is great to see you, my friend.
Well, John, thank you, and it's a great honor and privilege to be on your show. I've listened to many of your casts, and it's just refreshing to hear plain, true heart talk when you interview people and the people you've had. So to me, this is a great honor to be part of this cadre of people you've had on the show.
So thank you, brother. No, the pleasure's all mine. And listen, at the end of the day, this thing of ours, this most noble of professions, it's had its moments. It's had its moments, and it's so refreshing when somebody like yourself can have that lens of 38 years, right? Because our best teacher, I think, is experience. And
Yes.
And that's what you bring. You bring just a ton of experience to the table. And this book, I before we started the podcast, we were talking the Peacemakers Guide to Law Enforcement Leadership. It's available on Amazon. I will put the links in the show notes. It starts off on January 1st and goes, there's something for you to do, to reflect upon, to improve upon every day. How did you come up with that concept? Because I think it's genius.
Well, knowing cops, very few of us have the time to sit down and read a book, right? And the genesis of the book, how it played out for me, is I had just retired at the end of 38 years. So I started hearing, COVID was really picking. I was ending when COVID was getting ramped up, right?
Right. You and me both, man. You and
Right.
me both. Yeah.
And I think God sent us like, that's enough, right?
The writing on the wall. I'm not going to calls with a mask on. This is crazy.
It's over the top. And so and I still stay in touch with folks at all the places I've worked. I've stayed in touch with people, right? And what I noticed was when I talked to my buddies at this department or the office, it's the same thing, and it's the same problem. Whether it's on the line level, whether it's a corporal, a sergeant, a detective, a lieutenant, a colonel, you name it. Essentially, they're generally the same problems. They're people problems. But we get so picked up in the minutia of the day that you forget why you're doing this job. You just get caught up on dealing with today's problem, and the collateral effects of that sometimes gets forgotten because of the heat of battle. And knowing, boys and girls on the job, it's very hard to just sit down and read a book, let alone watch a movie. And you send somebody a video longer than 5 minutes and they're not watching it. Okay.
True. No doubt. No doubt.
So I would talk to friends, and I was thinking back of my life, not too similar to how you wrote. You think back like my first call. I remember my first call, And if I didn't have the FTO that I had, that might have been my last call, right?
Right.
And real short, I mean, I don't like the war story, everything, but if it
No,
was
let's hear
for
it.
this guy, so I went to the academy. I'm pretty gung ho, and you know, I go to I mean, right out of the shoot, right? Meet my FTO. Hi, I'm Ciro. My name is Mike. You know, the room was full of smoke, and because everybody smoked then, right? I
Right.
didn't. I'm sitting there gassing like, man, this room, you can't see people. And we get a domestic violence call right off the bat. So when we roll to the address, he's, you know, I'm not allowed to touch the car unless he tells me, right? You know, you're an FTO.
That's it. Yeah, no.
I get out of the car, and the woman that is in the yard is a bloody mess. I mean,
Okay.
she went several rounds with Mike Tyson. And I immediately forget everything I learned in the academy. And I'm going to go hands on. And the guy runs into the house, and he runs into the back of the living room by the there's like a fireplace. And I'm thinking, good man, there's nowhere to go now, right? And right about when I was about to reach out and touch someone, my FTO's hand reaches over and goes, whoa, 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 you know, and he takes over the moment. I mean, I was faster, obviously. I got in there quick.
Sure. Yeah.
He's right behind me. And so we cuffed the guy up, and I'm like, this guy is a piece of crap, man. Look what he did to this woman. And I'm thinking like a human being. I'm
Yeah.
not thinking, even though you go to the academy, it takes a while for you to process
Well,
things.
certainly. Right.
And so that later that night, you know, we get done booking the guy in, leave the county jail, and he sits down with me. He goes, "Listen, man, this is how this job works. You know, you can't do this, and this is what we do. And we're peacekeepers, we're peacemakers." And I remember him saying that way back in
Right.
1982. You know, you there's going to be times you're going to put your hands on people, but this wasn't one of them. You know, and I thought, and I remember sitting thinking to myself, what? Okay. And as time went on, I started understanding the role better, right?
Mm.
And so I would reflect from then to when I was a sergeant, and this happened. And then when I was a detective, or I was here, I was there, and I just started writing, like just shotgunning stuff. And then when I got done with it, I had 70,000 words that I had to cut down, and I thought, what's the way, right?
Right.
To give this, because the other thing I wanted to mention is I found myself having the same conversation with Deputy or Lieutenant XYZ that I did maybe 4 months ago with this guy, because they're all experiencing the same things with their people, right? It's like every parent has similar stories, right?
Sure.
My kid did this, my kid did that, and we all have these like shared experiences that we can help each other with. And I thought, you know what? If I break this up, and I just ask people to read one a day, and maybe that's the one that catches you that day. Maybe the next 4 days, like, yeah, I know that, and I put some procedural stuff in there too.
Sure.
But maybe that's the day you're having problems. Maybe that's the day you didn't notice that deputy or lieutenant so and so is acting different, right? And then instead of walking away going, yeah, man, he's acting weird today. No, that's a personal responsibility on you as their leader, you know, as their parent at work, to go over and say, hey, what's going on? You know, I have a section in there that I forgot the phrasing I use now, but I used to put a reminder in my calendar, my phone, to every day to get out of the office to go meet with somebody randomly.
Sure.
What happens when once you're in an administrative capacity?
Well, yeah, at Hillsborough, you were Hillsborough County SO. You were a colonel. You oversaw an entire division.
Right. So if I didn't put a reminder, you know, unless it was absolutely I couldn't, at least 3 out of 5 days, I would drive to, you know, a unit and just walk around there. And this way, when I'm there, right, they're like, you know, let's I go over and hang out at the training division for like an hour or two,
Right.
and see what's going on in training and talk.
So important. So important.
What you don't know. And then when they see you, it's only for bad news.
Right.
And the same thing I think goes all the way down to the corporal and sergeant level. If you let the web of administration and paperwork pull you in, you will be disconnected from your troops. And then they're not going to tell you, and you're never going to know when they need you.
Right.
So I have a lot of repeated themes like that to,
Sure.
you've got to know your people.
Thank you. I mean, listen, at that level, at Colonel, at the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office, responsible for all those specialized units, there's probably over 100 people
Easily, yeah, yeah.
easily, maybe 200 under your umbrella in that division. It's impossible for you to know every deputy, but the goal is that you know the captains,
Mm-hmm.
and the captains know their lieutenants, and the lieutenants know their sergeants, and the sergeants know the individuals. And so there's an early warning system built in there. If everybody's doing their job and they know you're like, I prided myself, Ciro, in the latter half of my career as a sergeant, knowing the kids,
Mm-hmm.
knowing that my guy had one kid playing soccer and his daughter was an introvert, but she liked dance and she had a recital this Friday.
Yeah.
Right. So maybe when my guy comes to me and says, "Hey, can I boogie a little early? I've got some things with the family going on," you know, that
Yeah.
you can be part of that solution, right? Because you know what he's got going on with his kids, or maybe conversely, there's somebody going through a hard time. There's somebody having a relationship issue. Um, the, the key to leadership is knowing your people. You
It,
can't lead what you don't know.
yeah. And what I think that builds, and it has to be genuine, right? Uh, Servant leadership and whatever, there's so many different names for the same concept, but really taking care of your people has to be genuine, right? So I remember one time at a place, uh, I'll names remain. How's that going? The movies, the names have been changed to protect the guilty. That is,
Okay, yeah, man.
I got a birthday card from someone in my chain, not at the sheriff's office, to be clear.
Okay,
It wasn't my birthday, and I looked at that and I thought, this is kind of disingenuous,
right.
right? And I never want to be that guy. And I just took that as a lesson. Like, if I always knew my direct reports' birthdays and things like that, because it's important to know that. And what's important to them, like you said, like if I have a guy and his kid is in pitching, this is a legit story, and he's pitching at state championships at Florida high school state championships, and he doesn't have the day off because we don't have the coverage. We're going to find the coverage.
Right, right.
Operate with one less guy.
We could do that for one of our guys so he doesn't miss his kid pitching at an event.
Right. That's a real event. Not like, oh, I want to take my boat out. Hey, listen, you got another weekend for that.
Yeah, there are times and places for everything. And that's I think the one thing that's been really cool. I didn't rise above the rank of Sergeant Ciro. And I think that at that level you have the most direct impact in improving the quality of the lives of your people.
Yep. That is the most I think the most connected rank in every organization.
Sure.
You're the father and the older brother at the same time.
Right. No doubt. No doubt. Father and older brother at the same time. And to speak to that, I think for logistical reasons, it seems to be the one where we just throw people in it to fill vacancies without properly vetting that they're one ready, and two, I mean, ranking and the promotional process. I think there's a lot that
There's a lot there, man. That's another book, right?
yeah, it's a whole nother book. And I think we've in some situations we just have said, listen, we 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 know how important that first rank is, that frontline supervisor, but we just fill vacancies.
Yeah, I think that if you look at some of the celebrated studies out there, where everything breaks down, and whether you look at the Rampart report, or even here locally in a couple of years, 20 years back, the Miami River Cop, or other places have had similar things. It's always at the sergeant level where the breakdown happened, because we either didn't pick the right sergeant, we didn't listen to the sergeant, meaning administrators, or we inundated the sergeant with so much other duties
Yeah.
that he doesn't have time to pay attention to
Yeah.
the kid.
No doubt. We didn't train the sergeant on what his real responsibilities were.
Yeah, we're more worried that this got turned in on time than he's paying attention to his people.
Where is your vehicle inspection report?
Exactly. That's important. Not that Bob over here is having problems at home.
What?
He's a grenade waiting to go off.
Right. Why has your guy been late to roll call the last 4 nights in a row? And what's going on with that? And what investigation? When was the last time you sat down with him to find out why?
Right.
Yeah,
That's where I think sergeants need to have the most freedom to almost, like, you're a coach. You got to be able to freelance and get, and what's happened is, in the profession, we have, because of liability, there's so many reasons, right? Liability and that we load guys and gals up with so much administrative stuff. And I cover that in the book. So if you're a lieutenant and you have X number of sergeants, what I've seen that some lieutenants do wrong is, they push their work down, and that's wrong, right? They should be, lifting their sergeants up to be free to get out there.
Sure.
And that's part of some of the disconnects that we have. Is you have other people who rise to positions of corporal, sergeant, lieutenant, and they do it knowing that this great responsibility, like a parent. This is this great responsibility to make sure this kid who just got out of the academy doesn't go left, right, or in the wrong direction. And then you have this other character who gets promoted, and to the idea like, now I get to do less.
Right.
And we don't do, as an industry, a really good job of selecting leaders sometimes, because every agency has their own way, right?
Sure.
And the tests, even the written tests, they don't really cover what we're looking for, because I have rarely seen a leadership test that is covering the nuances of being a good leader. Now, they do want you to know statutory things, which is important. They want you to know case law,
right?
But when it comes to the meat and potatoes of how to lead, influence, and take care of your people, I've not ever seen that as a test.
Ciro, why don't we adopt a peer review model? Why don't we ask the subordinates to rate? I mean, listen, all your special ops communities, before somebody gets on a team, before somebody leads a team, there's a meeting amongst the people that person was a group. Like, who better to know that individual than people that have been working with them real time on the road? Listen, most of our informal leaders aren't the people those aren't the people that are getting selected to be the sergeant, but they're the ones running the show and have the respect of the troops because of the way they conduct themselves. I mean, I think I don't understand the difficulty of adopting that with some other criteria, right? But we don't do peer review. We don't ask the alpha shift, who on this shift do you think would make a good supervisor?
Yeah, they don't. And I think a lot of that has to do with command influence on selection. Without doing the studies, I think that's intuitively, I think that's what it is. I like the idea. For a little bit of time at the office, they did have like a panel-ish, that we don't do it anymore, where you would get feedback from and that does work. It's cumbersome, but it did work. And you would hear, the men and women are brave enough to stand up and tell the truth.
Sure.
That we get good information. But it went away from that. So what we ended up doing is replace it with an assessment center.
Right.
And that's not bad either, because the assessment center you do see how someone handles, whether it be a press conference or a counseling and I think the assessment center has like 4 or 5 different exercises to
Sure.
include counseling, employees having personal problems, um, a retired employee that is kind of, or retired on duty guy who needs a little support. So that is helpful, but again, it's just a snapshot rather
Sure.
than like you said, we get the feedback from the people he actually or she actually works with.
Right. I always
You know,
thought it was funny that
how-
the evaluations always flowed one way, top, bottom. I mean, I should be able to, in theory, if we really want to improve the organization, if you're my lieutenant or you're my captain and I'm your lieutenant, you know, I should be able to say, hey, you know what, Cap, this quarter, these are some projects that came up. This is the feedback on what I think we could do better as a team. This is, because if nobody's checking us, right? If nobody's providing I mean, we'll go on a website anonymously and trash each other, right? But we won't actually confront the person and go, hey, I know you got a good heart, but when you did this, it was all jacked up, and this is the fallout. Don't do that again, right? I mean, like that would be beneficial for that individual. But instead, and who knows, maybe Ciro, maybe I'm not thinking it through completely, because I know there are a bunch of people out there that, I'll be damned if you're going to tell me how to do my job, right?
Yeah, but I think that goes back to how you establish the rapport with each other
Sure.
and be able to go. And you're right, some people you can't reach, by the way.
Right.
You can go to that guy or gal and say, hey, listen, you handled this particular scene, and here's the problem, X, Y, and Z, and I want you to fix this in the future, and blah, 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 whatever the corrective actions are, right?
Sure.
Maybe 1 in 12 doesn't take it well and blah. But I would surmise that the other 10 or 12, if you did it right, if you said it
Sure.
as a coach, right? If you came to the guy and said, listen, man, here's the problem. When you handle these type of scenes, we got to keep the reporters over there, and we got to do this over here. Whatever the correction is, if you said it, and it's how we talk to each other too.
Most certainly. How we talk to each other. Do we talk to each other?
No, that's the problem. That's where we're to the point of you said, sergeants are the guys, and I would get, you speak of evals, it used to not drive me mad, but it used to annoy me a little bit, where I was the last sign off for an eval, and if they didn't like it, then they can grieve it up to, all that kind of stuff. So I would get these cookie cutter evals, and I'd look at it, I'd go, what is this? And I would go back through the chain. I said, not everybody has, we have to have the obligatory 3, you gotta have 3 goals. You gotta do this, it's machinery,
Sure.
garbage.
Yep.
Do you know your guy? And I would go to, I get with the direct report. I said, does this guy even know his people? Well, yeah. I said, well, how come all 8 of them or 12 of them have the exact same goal? There's no way. Okay.
Right.
And don't give silly goals like take 1 course. All right. What does he or she want to do? And my point was, if you have Deputy X and he wants to go and be a canine guy, right? What is he doing, and what are you helping him to do to get there?
Yeah.
Right?
Is he reading Scent and the Scenting Dog? Do you have him going out to canine training, catching dogs? Do you have him shadowing? What do you have him doing?
I would see goals like read a book and write a paper. Okay, first of all, middle school is over.
Right.
Stop.
Right.
Right? And I would send them all back. And they have to be something that helps your guy or gal get to where they want to be.
Right.
Otherwise, cookie cutter garbage that we do every year. And you know what happens? It becomes meaningless to that employee. But but moreover, not only is it meaningless to your employee, when you're talking to him about his eval? What's he hearing? It's like that supervisor is the Charlie Brown teacher. Wah, wah,
Sure.
wah.
Yeah, of course. Of course.
Right? Versus me sitting down with my guy and saying, hey man, what do you want to do this year in your career?
Right.
Where you look to go? Like,
How can I help you get to
right.
where you want to be?
You get a guy, I really want to work street crimes and I want to do this and I want to do that in investigations. Okay. Well, let's find you an investigation schools. I'm going to see what I can do, and maybe we'll get you TDY to one of the units, right? And you
Right.
could pick stuff there, and we'll find something else, and we'll start, shaping you so when they do a recruitment for that unit, you have all the stuff they're
Yeah, you
looking
know how to do search warrants. You know how to do buy busts. You've been doing the work to put you in a position to be a successful candidate for the next assignment.
for. And it goes back to what we said. Do you know your people?
Right.
Do
Right.
you know your guy?
That's it's so important. And honestly, part of the thing that I write about was, you have to have your personal affairs in order so you can be that supervisor for those people under your care. Because if your life's a mess,
No
you
way.
can't be a part of their solution. If you're drowning, who are you saving?
Right.
Right. And so that's where, for a good part of, I don't want to say a good part of my career, but there was a part of my career I was drowning. I was not a good boss, Ciro. I was not professing all the things that you and I are talking about now. And shameful. I was a piece of shit. I was not a good man. I wasn't a good father, husband, or boss. And it was impossible for me to be all those things because I wasn't anything for myself. I wasn't taking care of myself personally or professionally. So
Right. It starts with you.
you have to put the effort and the energy into you being the absolute best that you can be so you can be all those amazing things for everyone else in your life. I love the fact that you reference often um, some religious proverbs and
Yeah.
and some spiritual guidance on top of, listen, um, I've got Saint Michael tattooed on my shoulder going down my arm. And I when I present, I don't, you know, being sensitive that not everyone subscribes to a certain philosophy or religion, but I think a higher power, whomever that is for you, plays a role in your law enforcement life.
Yeah.
Whoever you pray to when you close your eyes. And the fact that you've got on many of these days a reflection, and with a proverb, 28:1, the wicked flee when no one is pursuing, but the righteous are bold as a lion. Things that,
Yeah.
some of the founding principles of this noble profession. And I think that causes you to reflect, what is it that I'm doing here? What is my role in this mission of taking care of others and protecting those that can't protect themselves? There isn't a day that goes by where you're not forcing someone to do
Hey,
something that makes them better.
I think, so for me, uh, I, I'm a big St. Michael guy too, right? And, um, and listen, the roller coaster of my life, if there was not a greater power, if God was not every once in a while pushing me this way or that way, Jesus has driven me home, right? We've all been there. There's times I said or did something that I go, wow, what is wrong? Okay, I'm not doing that again, right?
Right.
Um, and then I would reflect and then realize, okay, I'm here for something better,
Hmm.
uh, and I'm better than this. And so every time I tripped, fell, or fumbled, somehow, and I want to, whether it's your conscious, however that works, or the Holy Spirit, which is how I want to see it. It
Right.
woke me up and said, "Man, I shouldn't have said that, or I shouldn't have done that." Or, but conversely, every time I listen to my intuitive sense, whether it's your street sense or maybe your street sense in the Holy Spirit, I went, wait a minute, something's not right here.
Right.
Smell something. And then it would turn out like, holy Moses, I was right, you know? And to the point where we're looking for a fugitive one time, and real bad guy, and I saw a window move, right? I saw the curtain move a little bit, and nobody with me believed me. And that son of a gun is in there, man.
Yeah.
Okay, I know it. Nobody believed me, right? And so we're sitting in the house, and the door's locked, and so we pop the window and we go in, and a cat runs across, and I look at that and go, oh no, please don't be the cat.
Please tell me there's more than a cat in here.
Right, and I could smell now when I'm in the apartment, I could smell like a recent cigarette, right? And we move through the house and we find him in the closet hiding. And I just remember going, you know what? I could have just said, sure, guys, let's just, 10-8 and go out.
Right.
But something, and I just remember something in me told me, right, don't, this guy's here, right? So I really think if you listen to God, and again, I'm not I'm a Catholic, and I wish I didn't curse as much, and I wish I was,
That makes people that know me know that. Yeah, I understand that sentiment. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a Catholic, cradle Catholic, born and raised, went to Catholic school, and every day I am suffering and sinning. So with that said, but I listen and I believe,
Right.
and so every time I denied my intuitive or my sense, or listened to my ego rather than your better angels, right? It was okay. I have to go to the office and explain this one somehow.
Right.
But every time I went the other way, I went, hey, wow, this landed great, so that's why I put it in there, because I would think back to moments, and because anybody, what's the most scariest thing we all did, right? Pulling over a car in the middle of the night. I don't care. You could be, if you don't have a little bit of a twitch, right?
Yeah.
You're alive, or you're a fool. Like, and how many times you went like,
you're not assessing the situation for what it is.
right?
No, the only reason many a night that I went home was because of divine intervention.
Exactly.
And to say that it was anything else I'd be lying to you if I told you it was anything else but that. There's no reason why. And over 38 years, there's no doubt in my mind that situation was as true for you as it was for me.
Yeah. Once you pay attention and you see it, you see God's hand. You see divine intervention.
No
and
doubt.
like, if you deny it, then you're going to find out. That's what will happen to people. They'll find out.
Sure.
That's why we get to coming through the storms, and this is where our efforts are to pay back. Right?
Yeah, man. Yeah, it's important. It's important. At least it is. Once you realize that, once you've been in the darkness, it's incumbent upon you to share and give back, so either people can avoid those dark places, or if they find themselves in a dark place, they know where the light switch is, right? They know how to get out of that situation. And I think your book here is a proactive attempt to do that. And that's what I just love about it. It's like you said, if you were to look at this book in its entirety, over 400 pages, you might not even pick it up. But all you're asking is for somebody to read a page and a half a day.
Yeah. And there's there's stuff in there that is personal, in the sense, like, when I tell people know when to speak and not to speak, it's I spoke when I shouldn't have at times, right? And I
Right.
go,
Correct.
well,
Yeah.
that one's going to hurt. That's going to hurt, right?
Sure.
But then there's times you have to speak and then appreciate that this will be painful.
Right.
It is about if it's something of style or foolishness, whatever. That's not the time to. That's not to fight, right? But when it becomes something of moral value, how we're going to affect someone's career and job, that's the time. That's maybe when you can throw yourself on a sword and talk. But if it's
Sure.
whether or not, like I personally don't care for a lot of the stuff that the agencies do now with TikToks and stuff like that. I sometimes I kind of look at that and go,
You
I don't care.
cringe. You
I
cringe and
do.
go, what are we doing?
I don't like it.
Right.
I the uniform and the people in it in high esteem, and I just think that we're trying too hard to be, like everyone else.
Which we want to be liked. And
I don't get it though.
we've this is the and so why don't we go down this rabbit hole since I I think the beginning of the end for us is when we were stopped being feared.
Yeah, yeah. There's
Fear
got to be.
is an amazing listen.
Yeah,
Fear keeps you from doing things. Fear empowers you to do things.
yeah,
Fear is a great motivator. And when you remove fear from the equation, if you're a bad guy, you're laughing at us right now because there are no consequences. And I think a society, I think we lost touch with what our role in this place is supposed to be. We stand up against evil.
right. That's one of the. I in the beginning of the book I put about Sir Robert Peel, right?
Yes.
And the reason I wanted that in there is and like people hear about Sir Robert Peel in the Academy and then they forget about it, right?
Sure.
And so,
9 policing principles.
right. So if you and I were PhDs, we can rewrite that into a giant book and then sell it because it's basically, community policing, problem oriented policing, this policing, that policing. The people are the police and the police are the people. And we should be judged on the absence of crime, not by the number of arrests. And it goes on and on and on. So
Yeah.
18,
If we're judged on the absence of crime, we are failing miserably.
right. But we arrested more people. No, but you see what I mean? How
The
scary that
idea is that we should not be arresting anyone because people
is?
should be living a life void of that.
And then we've spun onto these other areas, which is fine, except we didn't add people and or resources. We just took
Sure.
resources away, right? And so when it goes to our view to the public, right? I like that. Remember that Norman Rockwell famous
The officer sitting on the stool with
with the little
with the
runaway.
boy on the stool next to him.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
He's a man of authority who is human enough, and you could tell from the photo. I'm going to help this little kid out because the kid's lost and he's wrong, and running away from your parents is probably not a good idea.
Right.
That's what I take from the picture. So when we bring ourselves to caricature and we clown it up, which that's how I see it. I mean, I know
Right.
everybody that's doing it now is going to go, come on, man, Ciro. It's like what we do now. We TikTok and we Instagram and we do this and we do that. But we're over here doing like a dance and everything, and we do a little salsa, and some of them have been humorous. I laughed at them. I
Sure.
just think that's what we should do when we want people to respect us and look at us not as an army of occupation, but
Right.
no, we're there to help them, but also, don't pull on Superman's cape because that's not going to work out for you.
No. There's definitely a balance that needs to be struck between being the peacekeepers and being those people that are approachable still, right? I mean, we have to have both, but I think, have swung that pendulum so far
To be
to
like,
wanting to be everyone's friend and to be accessible that there's no fear. I mean, look, I don't watch the news anymore because when I do, agita, as my mother would say, agita, I get heartburn, because I shake my head and go, what in God's name, what are we doing? Just there's no consequences. Anybody can do whatever they want. The wolf, man, the wolf does not fear the sheepdog right now, and that's a problem.
I've got two things to share with you on that I think are funny. One, if you remember Demolition Man,
Yes.
even though not the greatest acting in the planet,
No,
and
but the premise,
is exactly right. They had to unthaw somebody from our time
right?
because they were not prepared to deal with violence.
No,
Right? I went to a country once, a foreign country, and I went to the local police. My buddy and I went, and they said, "Hey, show us around." So we got in their little tiny car. It was like it was smaller than a Yugo, man. This is the smallest police car I've ever been in. It was
they put the bad guy on the roof.
I think it was a Fuso or something like that. And we saw this bar, and we looked at it. It's in the evening, and we go, "Hey, what's that bar like? Is that any good?" And the guy goes, "Oh, it's a great bar, but you can't go there." And I go, "Well, why can't we go there?" He goes, "Oh, well, one of our officers went there the other night, and they recognized him as being a police officer, and they beat him up." And then my buddy and I both looked at each other and were like, "Well, how come that place is still open?" Right?
Right.
Because
Why?
it never
Right.
happened in the
Right.
United States. Not anywhere I know of that if you beat up a cop just because he was a cop and they
Right.
recognized off duty,
Now
how
we'd be having roll call there.
uh-huh. That place had been shut down yesterday.
Yeah, man.
And and fast forward, we're getting, by this, like that thing they had up in Seattle with Chad and all this other stuff. This is all part and parcel, and the defund movement and all that kind of stuff is part and parcel in in denigrating the noble profession that is the warrior guardian.
Right.
Right? There's times we put our guardian hat on, and sometimes it's time to put our warrior hat on. And somehow we've gotten, by this weird, we want to be loved and liked and be cool and be on the newest TikTok dance thing. Or do you
Right.
remember when they did the ice bucket challenge? It
There
just
was that. There was all sorts of listen, I'm not a dancer, so but there's a lot. There's way too much dancing and and all that nonsense, man. You want to donate to a cause, write a check. You know.
Yeah, and there's things, if you're going to video like our guys involved with Little League and our guys involved with PAL or our guys at a Boys and Girls Club or helping a kid do homework, I get that makes sense. All right, that's
Right.
where our guardian hat's on. But this other stuff just gets so corny, and the problem that I think is the public then sees this a little bit, that sense of respect is diminished, right?
Yeah.
And then because I think it is in that regard, and it doesn't make us more human, okay, at least in my opinion. And then the other part that happens with that is we do too much of it, and it becomes a thing, right? And what happens is then the cops that are working, what do? They go, "Hey man, I had a great arrest today. Didn't make it to TikTok
Right.
or else, didn't make it to Instagram, didn't make it to Twitter, right? Or I had this," and then that has an effect on the troops.
Yeah. No doubt.
You
Yeah.
know,
When your efforts aren't celebrated, like, or we're not recognizing guys for making a real impact in the safety of the community
that's
that are risking their lives. They're not making videos and coming up with a fancy dance move. You're right. There can be a ripple effect there as well.
if it was more like five of the good ones and the occasional one thing,
Yeah.
I could probably stomach that medicine.
Right.
But it's become, and it's
Yeah.
not,
We
it's
don't
every,
have balance.
yeah,
No
it's every.
balance. Hey,
Now, go ahead.
before we were talking a little bit ago about how we treat each other, how we take care of each other, how we I should want nothing but the best for you if we're in this thing of ours, right? And I know some of my views don't align with reality because at the end of the day, we uh we do a pretty poor job of supporting and taking care of each other. At least at least behind the scenes. I mean, we purport all sorts of initiatives and everybody has each other back. And, I think to the untrained eye, that sounds great. But I wanted to talk to you about Chief Mary O'Connor.
Okay. Yeah.
Um, I get angry. I've read an article that was put out on LinkedIn by a female chief somewhere. I'm not going to out her, but her advice to the law enforcement community was just take the ticket. And I lost my mind. You know how you say to yourself, you start typing and then you go, all right, what would I tell somebody that was doing what I was about to do? Right. Don't respond angry. Don't, I just said, how can that person's takeaway be 180 degrees from mine
Yep.
and be in the same profession? And it's about professional courtesy. It's about us you know what, Cyril? I am going to treat you different on a traffic stop than Joe Schmo. I am going to you've got credit with me,
There's
right?
difference.
It's different. It's a courtesy, it's a respect. It's, you know what? You put yourselves in harm's way. I'm going to let you slide tonight because that's the thing between us. That is it fair? Not fair. I it's not fair, but you've earned the right to be given a break and a pass. And when we don't do that, when receiving a cup of coffee from the local guy on the corner is now a fireable offense, right? When I lost my mind. Help, what the hell is going on, brother?
I think, first of all, to be 100% clear for the listeners, I know Mary Connor, and Mary's a good person, and I had worked with her. And as a matter of fact, she helped me put on a blue mask one year here, right?
Right.
So, I could tell you that she's an ethical, good person. And unfortunately, she got caught up in a slow news day because there was nothing else going on.
Good God. I mean, this is what we're talking about. I'm watching it.
And the virtue signaling world, right? Because
Right.
that's what we're a virtue signaling world. And she got caught up in that. But the part that kind of bothers me is this. So somehow or another, someone got the word from that because there's only three people on the traffic stop: the deputy and her husband, who's a retired cop too, right?
Yep.
So how does it go from there to the media?
Yeah, this wasn't cell phone camera footage from a
Right,
passerby.
it's body camera. So that
Yes.
means someone in that organization, right,
Yes.
have said, hey, by the way, you may want to look at this to whoever the reporters were, whatever agency it was. So, that's unnecessarily damaging another person. We're a profession that we're supposed to take care of each other. Not again, not a criminal thing. You do a
Not at
criminal,
all.
we're both slapping cuffs on you. That's a different story. You
Correct.
do criminal, something unethical, immoral, illegal. That's a different game. This is a not even a really good civil traffic infraction. By the way,
It's not against her. She's a passenger.
right, it's nothing. And because she is a chief of police, uh, the way that the world is telling us now, that the rules of engagement for us is that anybody in any position of authority in law enforcement, and especially a chief or a sheriff or what have you, uh, have higher jeopardy for your errors. Now, that goes right into, there's places out there charging cops with battery because an arrest went left of center.
Yep.
It's all part of this uh, and anti-law enforcement perception. And the real problem that's going to happen that the public hasn't, in my opinion, public hasn't seen yet is you're going to get less and less boys and girls wanting to be cops, good ones. You'll get people you don't want to fill the billet now.
Sure.
But the good ones, you know, because you don't need, and I know it's going to, again, not to be too controversial, but Boy Scouts do not make great cops.
No, they never have.
You need guys and gals who've had some life experience.
Maybe made a few mistakes along the way.
Right. And then who wants to be a chief and run for those particular positions when you know the scrutiny is going to be so extreme, right? It's a temporary job at best.
It's a shame, you know, and Mary was starting and very interested in officer wellness and
Yep.
starting programs to help combat post-traumatic stress. And she was all about doing things to better the lives of her people. And as a passenger in a golf cart, identifying herself as the chief of Tampa, if there's anything I can do for you, I'd appreciate it. You know, this is what she's.
It got fun like it does, and I think that tells everyone in these positions that you got to live error free, right?
Right.
Not do a damn thing, don't leave your house, and it's unfortunate because people make mistakes.
Most
But again,
certainly.
but is it a mistake of the mind or the heart? And then is it worth trashing one person's entire career at this point, at the point of where she's about to make a lot of difference for that agency, and it's a slow news day, so let's just pump this on the news every chance
Right.
we can.
It's a shame, and like you said, somebody with a dark heart released that to the media, with the sole intention of causing heartache for that woman and that department. And you know, that gets back to, you know, us taking care of each other. You know, that is, and when I've read this article, I'm like, this woman, the woman who wrote the article on LinkedIn, I go, this woman's part of the problem.
Yeah.
Right? She should be screaming at the top of the roof.
I have run into people in our profession, especially I went to the NA, and I would
Yes.
run into people, and we've had these discussions, and so I did run into some folks who were they're in my rank group, but they have a very holier than thou kind of thing.
Mm.
And I remember we were in a discussion one time about use of force, and anyway, I try to explain. Listen, fight's ugly. There's that stuff you might have you ever put hands on some? Well, yeah, I've done this. I'm not
Try to take somebody to jail that doesn't want to go to jail.
right. That little wrist lock armbar thing, that does
Not
not work.
happening. No.
Okay. You have to have some real hands-on moments, and the level of violence gets ratcheted. So what happens is, even though a person is a captain from wherever they're at, and whoever I'm talking to at the time, is I try to explain to them, listen, violence it's a tool we use. We use violence, okay? And violence is ugly and unchoreographed, and it's not a guy in a red man suit who's playing go down on one knee.
Nobody's got a whistle. Nobody's calling timeout.
And they have good fight skills, because even though maybe they didn't go to martial arts school, they weren't a boxer, their life experience of fighting and being effective has given them their own little style, and that works for them, right? And so what happens is the uninitiated administrator who went clearly just purely up the administrative route, never got dirty over here. I think what happens is they don't understand force, so they see ineffective force in everything. And then when a guy doesn't use it the way they think, that leads to escalation, and they view it as excessive force. When I've sat there and reviewing force, I go, no, that looks good to me. I mean, and I've had this I had a discussion with one of my captains once, and I said, this guy did fine, man. I don't know where you're going with this.
Right.
Well, and they think, well, that's because you like fighting. I do. I'm good at it, but I don't.
Right.
This 100% okay. Guy swings at you, you swing back. Okay. And
Period.
long story short, is a good right hand. Put the guy down.
No, and we have become overly concerned with the optics of the
Optics.
situation and not the facts. Our motto in our training division when I took it over, we came out with a challenge coin: swift, violent, decisive action.
That's beautiful.
Right? No, win. We're not surviving. I said you will no longer use the word survival. This is not survival training. We're winning. Winners don't need to survive.
Yep.
And knock on wood, brother, for the 7 years that we were in there running in service, we didn't lose a deputy at the hands of a suspect.
Yeah.
Because we empowered people to take action and not be a victim.
Yeah. If you're fast and furious and get it over with quick, there's less force.
Right.
If you dance around and monkey around with the guy, you just make him fight you back more versus putting him down fast. And the case I'm telling you about in particular, this was quite a discussion. So we had to ratchet it up to another level because it was like, I want to put charges. I said, no, absolutely not. It's ridiculous. Yeah. Oh, well, this is the part that gets me. Well, I'm a certified instructor. So am I, knucklehead.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
The only problem is I have more than an 80-hour flash course on how not to, right? And you're not understanding violence, which is not the same. And that's where I think I have it in there too. You got to know if you're going to supervise people, you've got to know, you got to be a journeyman in some respects, right?
Right.
The same applies to, like, if I'm working, a street crimes unit, I got to know that my guys are going to get their hands dirty a lot for that.
Sure.
Now, my guy over here working, if I'm in charge of the school crossing guards, I should not have a lot of high violence cases.
Right.
There should not be a lot of use
Right.
force there, right?
Right.
But that means I should be able to when this guy triggers on early warning and he's had 3 uses of force in 2 months, yeah, he's a busy guy arresting bad guys.
Right.
He's doing the paperwork.
They tried that when we were in K9. Every K9 deployment was a use of force because we came back with bad guys. You'd have 10 in a month,
It's the job.
doing my job, not a problem employee, quite the contrary.
Yeah. So
Funny,
it's knowing the thing, the same way if you're working in a narcotics unit and you see your deputy, your detective, and the confidential source is rather alluring, you should go, okay, first of all, you understand the rule, right? You don't meet with this person but without anybody but two on one, okay?
Right.
And place is safe, but be careful. Oh yeah, no problem, boss. It'll be okay. I said,
Right.
okay, I'm warning you. I love you.
Yeah, man. Listen, I've seen this movie, man. I've seen this movie and I know how it ends.
I used to tell people, listen, man, I'm telling you, I'm your work daddy. I don't want to have deal. I'm not dealing with you this way.
Right.
Right.
That's
but
funny.
You have to anticipate for your boys and girls if you're going to keep them out of either harm's way or the fact that they may fall vulnerable unknowingly.
Yeah, no doubt.
When when your kid drives, right? My kids are adults, and I always tell them, hey, call me when you get home, right?
Yeah.
My oldest was in the Marine Corps, and I used to tell him, hey, when you get, he was on a deployment, and I would go, hey, yeah, I know you're not gonna have phones, but do me a favor, just if you get a chance, send us a line, right?
Right.
He would, and then he got it, he
of course.
And those are our kids, right? But if we're not doing that for our people we're in charge of, now think about how much time we spend at work too.
Right. No, it's a whole nother life.
Right. And we're going to go, yeah, man, it'll be okay. No, man, you own that guy or gal. Own them, and
you do if you care about them.
Absolutely.
Do if you care with them. Ciro, I want to be respectful of your time. And before we leave, there's under your inspirational items, there's something I want to read. But what's something that you can leave the guy or girl that's riding around on their way in, on their way home? Again, I'm going to let everybody know about the Peacemakers Guide to Law Enforcement Leadership. Advice, tips, reflections. It's a journal for the law enforcement servant leader. But what's something that you could leave them with a thought as they're making their way in this thing called life?
Okay, that's good. That's good. I was thinking about this the other day because I was listening to your stuff, and there's so much, right? I mean, I honest to God, I used to joke about this all the time. I wish I could take a USB cord and plug it into people. And with full disclosure, yes, I screwed that up. Ignore that one, but
Right.
learn my lesson. So all the good things I've done and all the mistakes I've made, I'm downloading them in you, so you learn from that. But if I had one thing, whether in your personal life, your professional life, your parental life, in every aspect of your life, you have to see yourself as a leader. You're a leader in your home. You're a leader amongst your groups. You can be a leader amongst leaders, but you are a leader because you have to hold yourself to a higher standard. And every time you have to make a decision that could compromise your leadership, whether it's a millisecond, right? Or a protracted decision, or it could be a business decision. You have to ask yourself these four things, right? You got to ask yourself, am I doing the right thing? I got a yes. I'm going good. Am I doing this thing at the right time? Is it the right timing for this? Am I doing it in the right way? And if I'm doing it for the right reasons? And if I don't get a yes to all four of those, step back and rethink. But at work, at play, with your spouse, with your kids, am I doing the right thing at the right time for the right reasons? And if I can't get yeses for that, man, don't do it. Right?
Don't do it. Really, it can simplify some really complex situations for us, can it?
Yeah. As a matter of fact, I have used that expression or that leadership decision making model, if you will, when I brought guys in and they did X, Y, Z and whatever their error was. I go, listen, man, I know where you were with this. Okay, this is me talking to you. It's not going in any other negative direction, but I really want you to. And you know how guys come in, they don't want to go, oh, I screwed that up, but you know,
No, of course
they
not.
don't want to own. I said, slow it down. Okay, let me tell you, were you doing the right thing? Yeah, I was doing the right thing. Of course you were. Was it the right time? Well, was it the right way? And then they go, yeah, okay, maybe not the right way, right?
Right.
Or maybe not the right reason. Did you do that because of this? And so one of those would always click. And then I would always get a response back from my direct report, like, you know what, you're right. I could have waited on this, or I could have done this, or maybe I was motivated because I was so tired of this guy, mother effing me, that I could have come back with a warrant instead of like BSing my way through this,
Sure.
right?
Whatever
And
it was.
right, so if you hit those four, and I got guys who come back to me and joke about me all the time, hey man, I got 3 out of 4. I go, well,
Oh,
you're thinking about
it's better than meatloaf, right?
it. Yeah, right. Yeah,
Two out
that's
of three. 2 out of 3. 1 out of 4. 2 out of 3. 3 out of 4.
but if you miss all four, man,
Yeah,
oh,
no,
good.
that puts us in the trick bag.
That's no bueno.
No bueno. I love it. It's no bueno. Hey, I want to leave with this prayer for police. You have it in your book, and it's just Almighty God, whose great power and eternal wisdom embraces the universe, watch over all law enforcement officers. Father in heaven, please give them the strength, the courage, and the perseverance to endure the unjust condemnation, danger, and physical abuse to which they are at times subjected. We recommend them to your loving care because their duty is dangerous. Dear God, grant these brave souls your almighty protection. Unite them safely with their families after duty has ended.
Amen.
Amen, man. Amen. Brother, thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you for taking the time. Thank you for sharing. And it has really, really been a pleasure and an honor to have you here with me today.
Mine too, brother. Thank you.